We tend to think of history as some grand, heavy thing, written in towering megaliths, rusted broadswords, and the cold stone of ruined fortresses. But sometimes, the deepest, most visceral threads of human experience are suspended on nothing more than a length of rope and a plank of wood. To the modern eye, the swing conjures pictures of scuffed knees and playground fun, of the golden days of childhood, which all too soon are gone. But the swing is not just children's play, and this ancient impulse hides a long and fascinating history, a world where magic and ritual are blended with courtly romance and even the mysteries of the universe itself. This is the story of a sacred and forgotten communion with the heavens, something which just happened to become our favourite childhood game. To find the first footprints of the swing in history, you would have to visit the island of Crete, and you would need to look past the grand palace of Knossos. In fact, you'd have to look at something so small, so deceptively modest, that you could hold it in the palm of your hand. This is the Minoan Swing. It was unearthed at the site of Hagia Triada in 1903, and was sculpted around 1450 BC, the twilight of the Neo-Palatial period, where 3.5 millennia ago, a Bronze Age artisan squeezed soft river clay between their fingers and captured something extraordinary. A female figure suspended in mid-air on a swing. The oldest direct evidence of such a thing anywhere on Earth. It is only 6.3 centimeters in height, and for decades it has puzzled archaeologists and scholars, who agree that this figure is fascinating and strangely modern, but cannot decide whether it is simply a toy, a reflection of some long-lost child in a moment of joyful play, or whether it represents something far stranger indeed. Notice the details. The two posts holding up the beam are not undecorated. They are crowned with birds, leading some to suggest that this figure, similar in iconography with other Minoan religious objects, may show a goddess descending from the heavens. The birds thus symbols of divine epiphany, the descent of the goddess into the mortal world below. This is even more fascinating when we look at the role of swings and swinging in ancient Greece as a whole, where the swing may have been used as a magical object during the festival of Anthesteria, where Iora, or the swinging, saw young women swing on wooden planks suspended from trees, their motion representing the tragic death of Eragon, who hanged herself from a tree in grief, bringing on a plague of madness and suicide to the Athenian people. And yet, more than this, the swinging may also have symbolized a state of liminality, the young girl suspended between childhood and approaching womanhood, or even a mirror of the cycles of nature and agricultural growth. The festival held at early spring as new wine matured and Dionysus was invoked. The swing's ascension then representing life, growth, and the intoxication of the spirit, and its descent mimicking death and burial, just as the vine is pruned in winter and appears to die, only to sprout up again when spring arrives. Such symbolism is not confined to the cults of Dionysus either. And in fact, the swing, as well as its association with ritual and festival, has been found in ancient cultures the world over. In China, for example, where scholars believe the swing arrived between 722 and 481 BC, the act may have represented a wish for long life and imperial permanence, and later, in the annual Cold Food Festival and Spring Festival, it may have been used as another symbol of cyclical rebirth, this time the swing believed to absorb the rising yang energy of the heavens, shaking off winter sluggishness and repelling evil spirits, as well as in more secular ways, as a visually impressive display of acrobatics. In other world cultures, swinging may represent a connection with the journey of souls and of transformative states in one's life and status, such as studied by ethnologist Arnold van Gennep in his 1909 book Rites of Passage, or James George Fraser in his study into swinging as a magical rite. Here, swings may be used in a variety of harvest rituals and sympathetic magic, one believing that the higher they swing, the taller their crops will grow, for example, or even, as seen in the rites of Eastern Borneo, as a kind of meditation, where one may receive the inspiration of the spirits by being suspended in the air in a kind of liminal state. In even stranger ways, swinging may be used as a kind of folk medicine. The priest or shaman believed to kick away the disease by swinging in the vicinity of an ailing person, simultaneously frightening away evil spirits with his motion and cleansing the soul of the nearby sufferer. In this way, the swing acts as a kind of purification rite, literally removing negative and demonic forces from the area by the act of stimulating the air and kicking away the spirits that linger. It is perhaps no surprise that swinging rituals appear all over the world, as the act itself is physically pleasurable, and similar in some ways to rocking, each act activating the motion-sensing apparatus of the inner ear, triggering neural pathways that regulate mood and spatial orientation, suggesting that rhythmic movement is a universal source of human pleasure, even thought of by some as a kind of memory of the womb, where one floats in amniotic fluid, the mother's walking exposing one to a continuous 1 to 2 hertz rhythmic swaying, a motion that is paired with safety, nourishment, and warmth, something very easy to translate into ritual and give it spiritual meaning in a wider context. That said, we here in Britain and much of Europe don't seem to have picked it up, or rather not in the same sense as in the ancient cultures of the wider world. We know that the Romans practiced ossitalio, where masks would be suspended from ropes and people would swing in the trees as a kind of purification through the element of air. But depictions of such ritual swinging are absent from the archaeological records of Romano-Britain. Instead, by medieval times, the swing seems to have been mostly associated with acrobatic displays, as well as being simply an item used for leisure and play, appearing from time to time in medieval marginalia, and linked with folk festivities and travelling performers. And so it remained for centuries to come. The swing given very little importance in the daily lives of the general public, save in a momentary joyful escape. A second or two of sensory and rhythmic pleasure at the end of a rope tied to a tree. In fact, it was not until the 1700s when the swing began to change once again. This time emerging in the twilight years of the French aristocracy as a symbol not only of leisure and fun, but of a theatrical and high-stakes game of courtship and romance. Here, the garden swing may once more act as a symbolic mirror, only this time it is reflecting the rises, falls, and unpredictability of romantic and physical attraction, as well as simply an extension of high society's longing for outdoor amusements and garden parties, things which easily displayed one's wealth, fashion, and effortless luxury. More than this though, the swing allowed something else to happen in the courtship ritual. Just imagine it. As a young woman ascended into the air, driven upwards by the muscle of an admirer or a discreet servant, gravity did what the rigidity of the court could not. Skirts lifted, petticoats flared, a flash of silk-stockinged ankle, an extraordinary, scandalous glimpse of skin in a culture obsessed with concealment. It was flirtation elevated to an art form, a brief, suspended second where the lady held a strange kind of power, looking down upon the men who watched her with bated breath. It was, in fact, this exact tension, this thrilling dance between secrecy and exposure, that culminated in 1767 with one of the most famous oil paintings in human history, Jean-Honoré Fragonard's masterpiece, The Swing. The story behind this canvas is just as scandalous as the painting itself. A wealthy courtier, believed by many to be Baron de Saint-Julien, approached an artist with a very specific, rather outrageous request. He wanted a painting of his young mistress being pushed on a swing by an unsuspecting bishop, while the Baron himself hid in the bushes below, positioned at precisely the right angle to look up under her swirling pink gown. The original artist took one look at the request and refused, but Fragonard saw the genius of it. Look closely at what he created. It's not just a painting, it's the heartbeat of humanity captured on canvas, and it tells a story not only of French high society, but of all of our hidden and human desires. Notice the lady at the centre, bathed in a pool of golden light, soaring in a hazy cloud of pink silk. Her shoe flies off, a clear, universally understood symbol of the loss of innocence. Below her, in the shadows, her hidden lover stretches out his arm in absolute ecstasy, even madness. To the left, a stone statue of Cupid presses a finger to his lips, warning us, the observer, to keep the secret to ourselves. It is, quite simply, the eternal human hunger for joy, for illicit and even forbidden thrill, and for that fleeting moment where we defy the earth and soar into the air, the rising of our spirits in the ecstasy of desire, perfectly captured in the metaphor of a swing itself. It may have been a far cry from the ancient rituals of swinging in spiritual practice, but it still shows us something of the power of this simple and pleasurable thing. After all, swinging momentarily breaks the bonds of gravity, offering us a brief experience of flight, weightlessness, and detachment from the earth. A physical mirror for spiritual elevation, and, in an esoteric manner, a reflection of divine play, something known in Sanskrit as Lila. In this concept, creation itself is the result of the inherently playful nature of the universe, and it may be depicted with deities like Radha and Krishna sitting upon ornate swings. In such depictions, this swinging is the ebb and flow of divine love and eternal bliss. Or in other words, a symbol that shows that creation itself is an overflow of bliss. Like an artist painting a canvas, or a child playing a game. God literally concealing itself in everything in order to find itself again. Like the divine playing hide and seek with itself, dancing through the cosmic cycles of existence for the sheer delight of it. In simple terms then, the ultimate reality may be that the universe is not a product of necessity, work, or karmic duty, but is instead a spontaneous and effortless expression of the divine. A twirling and whirling of deep time and endless epochs, all created for no other reason but for the pure joy of engaging with it. The fact that swings are associated with play and enjoyment is a given, and even in their earliest form as ritual objects, it is highly likely that for many actually engaged in the practice, it was pleasurable and a lot of fun. And the truth is, just like the gods and their divine play of Lila, we too like to play. And no matter what happens in the world around us, we will, somehow, always find a way to have fun. That said, for the vast majority of human history, children had no trouble finding somewhere to play. It could be a field, a muddy lane, or under the shadow of a village church spire. But as industry arrived, and the factories and cities exploded outwards, they swallowed up what was left of those green common lands, and millions of working-class children were left trapped in cramped, suffocating, and unhealthy housing. The divine play had ended, and the swinging pendulum of cyclical nature had well and truly turned, and suddenly there was nowhere to play. The solution, of course, was to use our newfound industrial spirit to deliberately create a space in the city where children could play. And in 1859, philanthropist Friedrich Engels set out to create the first known playground in British history, appearing at Manchester's Peel Park in Salford. It included walkways, paths, and plenty of open spaces where imagination could wake up from its smog-shrouded slumber. This idea was then further expanded by German pedagogue Friedrich Fröbel, the so-called father of the kindergarten, who designed a concept known as the sand garden, essentially a large sandbox for children to engage in creative play. A recognition of the role of imagination in the healthy development of the childhood mind. During this era, the swings seen in parks began to evolve, from simple rope and branch designs to dedicated structures with frames and seats, often made from the very same iron, bearings and chains that were forged in the factories of industrial towns. In this regard, the very same machinery that constrained adult life was now being reassembled to liberate the young. And for a child who themselves might be working long shifts in a dark and shadowed mill, to be able to swing high above the cobblestones was more than just fun. It was a fleeting taste of absolute, uncompromised freedom. In fact, by the time Charles Wicksteed began to mass-produce playground equipment from his Kettering factory in 1920, the swing had become the standout attraction in this new world of the dedicated playground. Wicksteed had understood the value of such places and structures, so that when Wicksteed Park opened in 1921, cementing the way for mass-produced, standardized playground equipment for the very first time in history, he had unwittingly captured the sacredness of the swing itself, and made it accessible to children everywhere. Just think about it. In a sacred space set aside for play, nothing may disturb the delightfulness of dreaming in the summer sun. The swing may be at once a speeding locomotive, a galloping horse, a pirate ship on storm-lashed seas, or the flight of fairies straight from the pages of childhood books. It may be then a perfect moment of escape and of channeling the powerful and joyful creative force, just as Robert Louis Stevenson described in his 1885 book of children's verses. How do you like to go up in a swing? Up in the air so blue. Oh, I do think it's the pleasantest thing ever a child could do. In other words, this carefree play creates a mood of enchantment, a perfect creative state where, as it turns out, one also mimics the motions of life and its many cycles from waking and sleeping to sowing and harvest. In this state, the child may experience feelings of control and mastery over an imagined world, something that lays the groundwork for personal agency, the belief that one's actions directly influence their outcomes, or in other words, attracting towards us what we wish to have and to be. It is thus, strangely enough, not too far removed from the ancient serpent goddess Irandante, shown on a swing on a 5th century fresco discovered in India's Ajanta caves, one of the earliest such depictions anywhere in history. Here she sits on a swing to attract her lover, literally luring in that of which she desires by way of her playful enticement, all happening in harmony with the cosmic rhythm of the universe, the motion of energy and vibration which brings form, shape, and worldly events into manifestation. Another kind of divine play, just like a child on a swing in a playground. Their worlds of imagination forming subtle threads that may be followed in their life, so that one day their imaginings become their reality. The playground, once it arrived, was a rare kind of advancement that could never again be taken away, never be removed as a new fad arrived or the world continued to change. It was there to stay, and in fact it only continued to get bigger and bolder as populations continued to grow and the world returned to peace following the end of the 2 world wars. In fact, By the 1950s, the playground had grown so much that it could now be installed in your own home garden. And the most popular of these self-installed miniature playlands was, and still is of course, the swing. The first of these had arrived in gardens as early as the 1920s, but it was not until the post-war baby boom that safe and private spaces for play became a huge industry in their own right, with simple A-framed tubular metal turned into a perfect miniature of the play park at home. The site of so many childhood memories, fleeting moments which somehow, over time, become permanent fixtures in our hearts. Snapshots of a time when it seemed like it was always summer, and our days were long and filled with endless joy. It is, of course, one of the most simple and universally joyful things that we can build. And the humble swing has indeed the power to transcend language and culture, time and place, remaining both fixed and immutable, while also inspiring its own kind of innovations. After all, the swing boat rides of the 1820s were merely the swing reimagined into something with grandeur and elegant appeal, and their modern cousins, the popular pirate ships of theme parks today, are nothing if not the imagination of the child brought beautifully to life. That time you imagined your swing being a ship on the waves has now been realised into a form which excites both adults and children of all ages and all walks of life. Even more than this, gyro swing rides, like the new Aviktas at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, take the sensation of the swing to new heights altogether. The sensation of gravity leading way to weightlessness, the elusive, airtime feeling that theme park enthusiasts crave, brought alive in ways unthinkable to those first pioneers of the wooden seat and the length of rope. To swing and to play is human, part of our very soul and purpose for being here. And you can see it reflected in the eyes of riders and in the dew-dropped delight of a baby in a swing that is now perfectly designed for their comfort and safety. The true triumph of industry and design. And not that different, really, from the very first swings in history. Something most likely even older than the Minoan figure, maybe even being an essential part of humanity itself. Our earliest hominin cousins, swinging happily on vines, ropes, and rustic designs of their own creation. But with all this light and life and sound that we see today, is there anything left of the sacred nature of the swing? Surely such things are as distant from the days of ritual and magic as the elderly are from their own childhoods, when they too were pushed along by their own parents on swings now lost in the mist of time and its endless cycles. The universe, however, works in strange ways, and seems to have a habit of keeping around those things that really matter. Today, after all, we live in a time obsessed with the virtual. We spend our lives tethered to glass screens, caught in a glowing, pixelated maze of algorithms and endless notifications, with digital futures that promise so much, but deliver so little of actual value. In many ways, reality is mediated, flattened, and passed into quantifiable data points. And we are, in so many ways, entirely untethered from the physical realm, and have left the spiritual far behind. Except, perhaps we haven't. Just look at a child on a park swing today, and you will see that the magic of life hasn't faded one bit. The physics haven't changed. The human heart hasn't changed. And neither has the instinct of the child to kick their feet forward and launch themselves into the open air, engaging in a dialogue with the fundamental forces of the universe itself. To witness these things is to see that, above all, the simple pleasures of humanity have remained unchanged. The precious image of the swinging child, no different at all to that very same vision which inspired the artist of the Minoan carving, or gave ideas to the mystics who painted those frescoes, and told strange tales of the gods themselves engaged in play. In an age that seeks to digitize every human sensation, the swing remains stubbornly analog, an altar to simple kinetic grace and fun. It is an act of trust, an ancient dance with the invisible forces that bind our world together. And so as long as there are still chains to hold and air to carve through, this humble, joyful motion will always offer us a moment of pleasure, a sanctuary of wind, weightlessness, and pure, unadulterated human joy. And that, in itself, is a sacred thing.
How do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue? Oh, I do think it the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. Up in the air and over the wall till I can see so wide. River and trees and cattle and all over the countryside. Till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. Up in the air I go flying again, up in the air.